Frank, look at this from mine, Jim, and Jean's perspective. After all, were we really that wrong for what we did? First, the firm has been facing difficult financial times due to the recession. Because of this, there's been a significant hardship in the 3 small communities where our mills are located. Just because this new legislation wouldn't actually bankrupt us doesn't mean that it won't squeeze us out of profits. And if we lose profits, the mill might go. And if the mill goes, so does the town and all the cities, because it is so economically dependent on us. It would be our friends, your buddies, Frank, that you would be threatening to put out of work. And even if the whole mill doesn't go, we would still have to lay off some employees. You don't want to do that to your buddies. Besides, they know we're going to present the most effective numbers to justify ourselves. They don't expect us to sabotage ourselves. We need to use different numbers for different purposes so that those dunderheads in the government see what all this regulation is doing to us. Besides, Frank, a few extra years of pollution won't hurt. The problem won't be solved with regulations. It's a problem that we can resolve here, and we will. We've had this problem for as long as I can remember. A few more years of pollution won't hurt. But cutting profits and risking losing jobs certainly will hurt. Can't you see why we did what we did, Frank?
Frank, I implore you, even though it may be difficult, you must follow God and do what is right. In the Bible, many people have experienced temptation, just like Tina, Jim, and John. Adam and Eve were tempted to eat the fruit of the garden, believing that it was just one little bite, that it wouldn't be a problem. Even Jesus was tempted, but he was able to look to the Bible to find strength. You too, Frank, must look to God in the midst of this temptation. 1 Corinthians 10:13 says, "No temptation has come upon you except what is common to humanity." God is faithful. He will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. But with the temptation, he will also provide you a way that you will be able to bear it. James 1 verse 12 says, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because, having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him." Frank, if you look to God, you can beat this temptation.
So Frank, let me do a cost and benefit analysis for you. If you were to drop the case, the cost for yourself would be your integrity, professional obligations, and possible designation revocation in the future. Your benefit would be keeping your current job and possible promotion in the short run. To the company, the long-term cost would be a corrupted corporate culture that promotes lying and denial, and also to face future lawsuits that are even more severe. The benefit for the firm would be the removal of current regulations, more short-term profits and reinvestments. To those who are potentially affected, their cost would be environmental pollution and long-term health of the community. The benefit they receive would be short-term economic stability. Based on the analysis, it is evident that the long-term cost of dropping this case is far more damaging than the short-term benefit it offers. If you were to report the issue, the cost for yourself would be your short-term career, friendships, and your relationship with the company. Your long-term benefits would be your integrity, fulfillment of professional obligations, and keeping your designation for the long run. To the company, the cost would be their reputation, financial strength, and loss of reinvestments. The long-term benefits, however, is a healthy corporate culture that promotes honesty and doing what's right. To those who are potentially affected, their cost would be short-term economic hardships and loss of jobs. But the benefit is a cleaner environment and greater public health. Based on the analysis, it is clear that the long-term benefit of reporting this case is far greater than its short-term costs. In conclusion, it will be logical for you to report the issue rather than dropping the case.
When looking at this case from a biblical perspective, we can see many examples throughout the Bible that demonstrate putting earthly possessions versus personal problems on an eternal scale. Mark 10 verse 17 to 22 is a great example of this. We see a rich young ruler who places his earthly possessions and wealth above God, and God tells him that that's the one thing he needs to drop, and he struggles with this, what to do, and we see that he is not accepted into God's kingdom. Luke 10, verse 38 to 42 is another great example of this, as Martha, who's related to Mary Magdalene, gets all these preparations for Jesus to come to this dinner and makes it extravagant and puts in all this work for him, but forgets to prepare her heart for God himself. So that as well causes the scale to be disproportionate. Philippians chapter 3, verse 12 to 13 talks about Paul, who put all earthly wealth, glory, and honor on one scale and found it immeasurably outweighed by the peace that God gave him and all that understanding. So the reality is, if he chooses to drop the case, the cost is the spiritual repercussions of turning a blind eye in the long term. He's going to have to grapple with that in his relationship with Christ. And there's no real benefit to his integrity or his spirituality. If he chooses to report the case, however, there's no cost to his spiritual integrity, but he will have the benefit of demonstrating honesty and putting his spiritual obligations first. He'll prioritize his relationship with God and the values that he has in light of his faith. Therefore, to conclude, we should have the exact same answer as we did before, and that is Frank should bring this up the corporate ladder. And this is because it allows him to do what is right morally by God, both towards God's people and the company, and also in creation, and not allowing this pollution to further damage God's earth.
Frank, in circumstances like the Northlake case, it is humans' nature's tendency to be selfish and do what is best for the individual versus the greater good of everyone. In general, you have to look to examine the consequences of your actions if you're going to go through with the plan and see this unsatisfactory outcome. If you're going to keep your conscience and do what is right, even though it may cost you your job, it could save your future one day if you do not lie. If another were to find out about the cover-up, that could easily cost you your job and any other future prospect of a job in that field. From a faith perspective, you have to lean on God, and that He trusts that He both gives us opportunities and takes them away. Through something like this, He may be moving us something to better we don't even know yet. But it is up to us to be truthful and remain strong in both our morals and values.